Let's say you're going to write a research paper on the book of Isaiah. So you want to do your research right, you want to get good sources, so you go to the library to find a commentary on Isaiah. It would likely surprise you to find that the book of Isaiah doesn't often come in a single commentary. If your commentary was published last half of the 19th century through the first 3/4 of the 20th century, you'll likely find Isaiah in at least 2 or possibly 3 different volumes. You'll have 1 through 39, 40 through 66, and sometimes 40 through 55 and 56 to 66. And you'll see 1st Isaiah, 2nd Isaiah, and 3rd Isaiah. And this can be confusing because your Bible just has Isaiah. So why is that? Well, scholars have noted there's a good reason to suspect that the book is likely a composite composition. For example, well, let me give you some of the reasons for that. Chapters 1 through 39, the historical setting of that is the 8th century. Jerusalem is standing firm. Chapter 40 through 66 is set in the 6th century. Jerusalem has been destroyed and the people have been in exile. In 1 through 39, the exile is in the distant future. In 40 through 66, the exile is a painful reality the people are coming out of. In the first 39 chapters, you have 8th century characters like Uzziah and Isaiah and Hezekiah and Tiglath-Pileser III. In the last half of the book, 40 to 66, you have 6th century characters like Cyrus the Great of Persia. In fact, those empires alone are different. In the first 39 chapters, Assyria is the big major international superpower, and in the last chapters, Babylon is starting to lose its power and Persia is on the rise. So for those, the historical setting clearly breaks, and there's no transition. The last verse of chapter 39 is set in the 8th century. The first verse of chapter 40 is set in the 6th century. And those differences in language and style and theological concepts and historical settings seem to point to different authors. Also, let's not forget the way a prophet speaks. Prophets speak to contemporary audiences with problems and issues that face them. For Isaiah of Jerusalem in the 8th century to preach sermons that only have meaning for those in the 6th century would be a very unusual situation in the Old Testament. It would likely be as unusual as your pastor getting up and preaching a sermon not directed at your congregation, but in fact the congregation that he says will live there 250 years from now. That would be an unusual Sunday sermon. It would be unusual for the prophet as well. The prophet was very concerned with addressing those contemporary issues, and it would seem that there does seem to be 2 different time periods set in the book of Isaiah. But I said the first 3/4 of the 20th century would break it up into 2, and that's because toward the end of the 20th century and contemporary studies have started to look more at the book of Isaiah as a whole, as a coherent literary unit. One reason that they do that is the literary context attributes the whole book to Isaiah. The Bible doesn't have any problems with 1st and 2nd Samuel, no problems with 1st and 2nd Kings or 1st and 2nd Chronicles, but we have 1st and 2nd and 3rd Isaiah and not named. That's unusual, so why not just think of it as Isaiah? The New Testament supports that. When the New Testament is quoting from Isaiah, it never says the first part or the second part of Isaiah. Rabbinic teaching as well always sees the book of Isaiah as a whole. The oldest manuscript of Isaiah, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which dates to the 2nd century BC, is 66 chapters. It is one cohesive unit. So scholars have started to wonder if perhaps those differences in theme, the difference in theme, post-exile versus future exile, account for those differences in tone and literary style and theology and vocabulary. You're starting to see scholars much more comfortable looking at the book of Isaiah as a cohesive, intentionally woven together unit. Ron Clements and Edgar Conrad would be 2 scholars that would be prominent in that line of thinking. So I want you to not be afraid of the possibility. I'm not going to say you have to believe it's 2 or 1 to do well in the class. I want you to be aware of the arguments for both of them, of course, but it's not important to me that you hold a particular theological position regarding the book of Isaiah. I simply want you to be aware of the issues.